A very good morning on behalf of the webinar committee presenting the national level webinar series Manthan. Today I would like to welcome Dr. Uma Warrior, Dr. Mono John as the speakers of the panel discussion and Dr. Nishant Singh as the moderator. The topic for today's panel discussion is self-compassion and resilience, emotional intelligence strategies during adversities. I would kindly request Dr. Nishant to take over the session now.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the whole CMS Business School fraternity, I welcome you all in the Manthan series webinar. Before moving ahead, let me introduce myself. I'm Dr. Nishant Singh, the moderator of this session. I have obtained a PhD degree from IIT Roorkee and currently working as an assistant professor in CMS Business School, Jain, deemed to be University. Here I teach subjects like artificial intelligence for HR functions, HR metrics and analytics, and organizational behavior. In today's session, we have two speakers who will be talking about how emotional intelligence strategies can be useful during adversities. They will also highlight the role of self-compassion and resilience in different scenarios. The first speaker of this webinar is Dr. Uma Warrior. She is an academician and psychological counselor with over 25 years of experience in the field of education and IT industry. Dr. Uma Warrior has PhD on emotional intelligence and published many research papers on AI and its impact on various fields. She is presently a professor in HRM and industrial psychology at CMS Business School. Also, she holds the post of chief counselor in the Jain group of institutions. Our second speaker is Dr. Monu John. He has a PhD in entrepreneurship strategy and transformation leadership. Dr. Monu John has 21 years of industry, academics, and training project consultancy experience in India and abroad. He is currently working as associate professor with CMS Business School, Jain deemed to be University. His areas of interest include transformation leadership, entrepreneurship strategy, emotional intelligence, communication, and employee engagement. So without further ado, I would like to invite our first speaker, Dr. Uma Warrior. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Nishant. Hello, everyone. Have a good morning to all of you.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. I would like to start today's session with an assumption that all of us who are attending the meeting, even otherwise, have faced some adversity in life at some point in time or the other. So adversity could be of different magnitude. It could be personal, it could be occupational, or it could also have multiple consequences, which could be long lasting or short, very short impact on you or your career or your life. So this adversity, what we are talking about today, is largely due to the pandemic that has brought in a lot of instability, a lot of change, a lot of disruption in the form of educational disruption, work disruption, probably financial instability, you losing a beloved one, or relationship break. It could be anything. So my question to you is that, have you ever lost your temper on yourself at some point in time or the other? The answer to this question is often yes. And what is the outcome of this? Most of the time, there is a negative outcome of us getting angry on ourselves. So what if there is a better way out where we can handle the adversity in a lot more positive way? So one of the very positive strategy of handling adversity is leveraging emotional intelligence. So most of us are familiar with the term emotional intelligence. It is your ability to understand, use, and manage our own emotions as well as others' emotions in a positive way. It is noteworthy to understand that World Economic Forum has listed emotional intelligence as one of the top 10 employability skills, bringing it to the forefront. And organizations are today talking about training on emotional intelligence. And we have come a long way from the time where there was a time at some point in time, say maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago, people used to call it a taboo to talk about emotions in the workplace. From there, we have come a very long way. And now organizations accept expression of appropriate emotions in the workplace. So how do we enhance emotional intelligence? So you can enhance emotional intelligence by enhancing the dimensions of emotional intelligence. Today, we are going to talk about two of the interconnected emotional intelligence dimensions. which can be leveraged for you to improve your emotional intelligence and your ability to handle adversity. So at this point in time, I want to ask you, how will you face an adversity? What is your choice of facing adversity? If I were to answer this question, I will either take one of the dichotomous path. I will either pass the buck to a person who's an external entity or to a situation outside and start thinking that I am perfect. The problem is lying with the external entity, or it's an external attribution. Or we would choose to attribute it internally and start beating ourselves up, saying that we are the reason for all the calamity, we are the reason, root cause for the adversity, etc. Both are not good. So the second one will lead to, that is when you are talking about being unkind to yourself, will lead to multiple psychological issues. And the first one will give you a very illusionary superiority, and you start becoming very complacent and you do not want to push yourself. Both are not good. So self-compassion at this point in time will come to your rescue. It will help you to take the middle of the path approach, and you will be able to have a balance toward the adversity, and you will be able to choose the right strategy. Self-compassion is a terminology which is of recent origin in research since 2003, when Kristen Neff, university professor in Texas, has written some article on self-compassion. So thereby it has become famous. But centuries ago, it was a very well-spoken and well sought out practice in Eastern philosophies like Buddhism. Though we do not speak about self-compassion in common parlance, there are many terminologies which are used loosely as a synonym as self-compassion. So at this point in time, I want to ask the viewers, I will request the viewers to type in the Q&A box what you think is self-compassion according to you. I will wait for 30 seconds so that we will use our time effectively. If you could type in what you think is self-compassion, our moderator will be able to read out and tell us.
Share screen.
Ma'am, sometimes people are confused with self-compassion and self-esteem.
Okay.
And people are saying that loving self and giving allowances to self, putting oneself in the forefront with a positive attitude.
Okay. So that could be one way of looking at it, where you will give a lot of preference to yourself and put your priority ahead of others. That's one very short-living attitude of handling an adversity. Every time we cannot push ourselves ahead of others' requirements, right? So that definitely is not self-compassion. Is there any other comment that has come in the Q&A?
Be kind to yourself, self-consideration and care, forgiving others.
Both are correct. Very nice. Forgiving others is a correct answer, actually. One of the dimensions. Wonderful. Is there anything else that has come?
Self-compassion is itself self-confidence.
Okay. Yeah, that actually leads to self-confidence. That's true.
Self-compassion equal to the amount of compassion I believe I have.
Okay.
Love yourself.
Love yourself. That's true. That's so true. Right. So all those points are more or less correct, and that's a perspective. There is no correct or wrong answer. That's just a perspective. When we enhance self-compassion, what happens is we automatically enhance resilience, which is a skill most sought after when we encounter an adversity. So whenever we need to improve the resilience muscle, all we have to do is improve your self-compassion. So there are many. So let's see what self-compassion is. It's kindness to self during one's inadequacies, failures, and experiences of suffering. So those were the points what were typed into the Q&A box as well. So you are being kind to yourself, and you're okay with the inadequacies, and you are fine with the failures, and you are ready to handle the suffering. You are ready to tolerate the suffering. So there are some terminologies which are closely connected to self-compassion, but not same as self-compassion. So let's look at those. So self-compassion is not self-obsession, and it is not self-esteem. So self-esteem is a very interesting component, which is also an emotional intelligence booster. Self-esteem is your positive evaluation of yourself. Meaning to say, you will compare your achievements in life with an external entity and you feel good about it. Meaning to say, you need to always perform above average. The moment you plummet a little, you start performing a little lower than average, your self-esteem start leaving you. So there is a problem with self-esteem. You cannot every time win a battle, right? So sometimes you lose, and that is the time when you need self-esteem. Unfortunately, it just leaves you. So self-esteem leaves you when you need it the most, unlike self-compassion. Self-compassion is your comparison of your own failures and success within you. So you are not comparing with another person. So that is definitely a superior term than self-esteem. Now let's look at self-pity. So what happens many times when we have any adversity, people start, as I was just telling you, either attribute outside, that is still okay, but the moment you start attributing the root cause of adversity to yourself, you tend to wallow in self-pity. And what happens? Then you disconnect yourself from the surrounding, the rest of the people, and you start believing that you're the only person. Oh, why me? Every time I am undergoing this kind of an issue, always I'm so unlucky. These are the phrases what you use when we wallow in self-pity. So that's just not going to do anything with your self-esteem or yourself as a person or your success. The next is self-indulgence. So self-indulgence is very closely connected to self-compassion, but not the same. Self-indulgence is an escape route. If you ask me, I will call it an escape route. Whenever you hit rock bottom, you would want to comfort yourself by indulging in something which is a pleasure generating activity, which is okay, which is fine. That's a temporary way of coming out of a problem or feeling low. But then if you continue doing that, that amounts to self-indulgence and it's not self-compassion. There's one last component in this which I want to, it's very interesting effect called Dunning-Kruger effect. This is basically a cognitive bias where a person who, the person who is undergoing this particular effect is not able to gauge his actual potential. He thinks or he or she overrates himself or herself with respect to the actual ability and starts thinking that this person can do anything and everything, thereby targets things which they really cannot.
I have a question. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yes.
If you look at the present scenario, the whole world economy is devastated. Right. And people are afraid of future. There is no certainty about anything. Employers are cutting salaries or firing people.
Right.
Hence, a stressful environment is created. So my question is how self-compassion can help people to have a positive attitude, thoughts in current situation?
Right. Thank you for the question, Dr. Nishant. Since we have chosen this topic for the webinar, there is a reason behind it. We wanted to share with you how self-compassion is going to help you personally as well as professionally. It has got both the dimensions. It will help you personally as well as it will help you professionally. Let's look at one or a few of the personal dimensions. The first dimension that I want to deal with today is dealing with adversity. Self-compassion actually helps you to get a growth mindset, brings you in a position where you would want to not give up when you face an adversity. You will try a detour whenever you hit a dead end, when there is a roadblock. You take a detour and you try doing the same, whatever you wanted to do. Though we have failed many times, you will still take a detour. You will still use different strategies and you will succeed. Till you succeed, you will attempt. So that is that's what we call resilience, right? So self-compassion actually helps you to build your muscle of resilience. The next is reducing self-doubt.
Self-doubt can I interrupt you, please?
Sure.
We are not able to see your slides.
Okay.
I think your slides got stuck. I can see only first slide. John sir, can you see the ma'am slide?
I cannot.
Okay.
I cannot. Can you share the screen, ma'am? And
I will.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, we can see that now. Yes.
Ma'am, please press F5. No, I think it has gone again.
Yes.
You're able to see now?
It's on. Yes. It's on. Full screen.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Perfect.
Sorry.
That's fine.
Sorry about that glitch.
Please.
No, not a problem. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So self-doubt happens when you start suspecting your ability. So how will you start suspecting your ability? What are the reasons why you will get into self-doubt? One could be your unfortunate socialization, meaning to say you are brought up in a home which lacks a lot of love or care or unconditional love basically. So that could be a reason why you will land up having self-doubt on any decision that you make. You will always think in the hindsight, I should have done this better. So that's one sign of a person having always a self-doubt. Another reason for self-doubt will be you are faced constantly with challenges. Every time you are facing some challenge or the other on a daily basis, that will actually topple the apple cart, and it might just make you feel that you're just not good for anything. So these are some of the reasons why you will land up in self-doubt. And it could also be due to a lot of failures in life, constant failures. 50 times you have failed, you start suspecting your ability. So self-compassion stops you there, saying that, look, you're not going to doubt yourself. You're going to go ahead. So what? 50 times I failed. 51st time I may just win. I may be successful. So self-compassion helps you to do that. We will see that how actually it does. And third personal angle is relationship building. Self-compassion, any relationship, once it's broken, is very painful, right? So self-compassion forms a connecting tissue in a broken relationship. Also, it helps you to forge new relationship, and it tells you it's fine. We need not be so bitter about a broken relationship. We should move on in life. Another fourth angle, a personal angle, personal benefit of self-compassion is people with high self-compassion tend to show lower psychopathology. Meaning to say, a person with a high self-compassion do not have much of a stress to handle, much of anxiety to handle, and do not get easily depressed. So that's something which is very, very essential these days, right? With a lot of challenges thrown at us during this COVID pandemic. I think this is something which is very essential for all of us to make a note of why self-compassion is important. And the fourth dimension is forgiveness. So self-compassion helps you to forgive people who have put us in adversity. So that's a very beautiful angle to self-compassion. It lets you forgive the ones who have brought so much of misery to you. It has brought a lot of adversity to you. It has jeopardized your future, but you will tend to forgive them and move on in life. So by forgiving someone else, you also are doing a favor to yourself, because your mind is clear, your cognition is clear. You don't have to think about all those negative things. You don't have to hold on to those negative things. You free yourself, which is a very beautiful angle. Just to cite here, we would have heard about many family feuds running generations after generations, where the grandparents would have got into some conflict, and that becomes a family feud, and the grandchildren do not know why the feud has happened, but still they continue with the feud. So self-compassion helps you to forgive what has happened and move on in life. So that's a very useful benefit of self-compassion. And now let us look fifth angle, which is organization connected. It becomes a building block for successful organization. Why? Because self-compassion, many of the organization, most of the organization, I would say, want to hire people with growth mindset. We spoke about growth mindset and resilience. So when organizations would prefer to have people with growth mindset, self-compassion actually gives you that growth mindset. Just to cite an example from the industry, this is LinkedIn CEO of Jeff Weiner. He is known as one of the most self-compassionate CEOs of the current times. So he believes that being self-compassionate creates a culture of compassion and helps to build successful companies. And he prefers to hire people with high self-compassion because he truly believes in that. Now, let's look at the dimensions of self-compassion. This is the model given by Kristin Neff in 2003. There are three dimensions of self-compassion: self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. So when I requested you to type in your Q&A box, many of us told about self-kindness. So that part is clear to all of us. Self-kindness is basically where you're kind to yourself, you're not judgmental on your mistakes, and you just shrug it off saying, yes, it has happened. I should not be so hard on myself. It happened. I'm sorry about what has happened. I should not repeat, or I should find a different way to do what I have been doing. That's self-kindness for you. Common humanity is the second dimension. So in positive psychology, they say being a part of a larger sum, meaning to say you look at a suffering, an adversity, which is also a suffering of many more. So it may not directly reduce your pain at that point in time. At least it will give you solace that, yes, I'm not the only person who is facing this problem. I think this is very relevant during this COVID times, because many of us have lost the job. Many of us have lost the financial sustainability, our pets or beloved ones, whatever. So that is a common humanity. When you look at common humanity, that tells you that you are a part of a larger suffering. You are also suffering along with many people. That gives you a little bit of a comfort, I must say.
Uma ma'am,
Yes.
As you rightly explained, self-compassion, we all have heard that excess of everything is bad.
Okay.
So I was wondering whether the excess of self-compassion could really go in negative sense or not, and can it be cultivated?
It can be cultivated. I have a slide actually on that. Probably I will take it towards after I finish explaining this with a live example, so that people will understand and connect it better. Just to give you take a page out of your real life, I'm using a organizational example, occupational example. You could also connect it to something like rejection in real time. So here you have put your heart and soul into a project where you're very, very confident that this project will see the light of the day, and you take it to your supervisor, immediate supervisor. Unfortunately, he declines it, rejects it, saying that it is waste of your resources. We are not going to take this forward. So what happens at that point in time? This rejection, right? So that is an adversity, that is a setback. Now, how do you use these three components to help us come out of that rejection or that adversity is what I wanted to discuss. So self-kindness is where you do not beat yourself up for the rejection from your boss. You do not hold yourself responsible for your inability to persuade your boss's attention or make him believe that this is a good project. So you many times say, I should have spoken like this. I should have done this. Yes, you can do that, but you don't have to beat yourself up for that. So it is okay. So this time it has gone out of her hand. I should attempt in a better way because many times it is not that you lack that ability. It could be also that your boss is not able to internalize what you said immediately. Maybe you give some time to your boss. He may think and he may come back saying that, yes, Uma, that was a good idea. So we need to be patient. We need to be self-kind to ourselves. That's the first dimension. Second dimension is common humanity. So here, I want your attention to be brought to a situation where there are many more people in the same organization whose projects are refused. So you're not the only person who's faced adversity or the setback, or you're not the only person who's suffering. You don't have to segregate yourself from others saying that I am the only person who's having this problem. Why me? Every time I'm rejected? No, it's many more people. So you need to figure out that many more people are having an issue with this kind of a rejection, and so that actually keeps you a little more comfortable. And the last dimension is mindfulness, where mindfulness, I think some of us are already aware of mindfulness. It's being in the present moment without being judgmental and having a focus on what is happening. So now how is that applicable here is when someone rejects your proposal, whether it is personal or professional life, the immediate reactions or the immediate emotions will be frustration, anger, sadness, or disrespected, etc. There are so many of those counterproductive emotions. So that happens for everybody, right? So what you should do, being mindful a person, is that you observe the emotions. You observe your anger. You observe your frustration. Do not judge them as negative. Let it happen. Let it come. Let that emotion come, because all the emotions, that is why it is an emotion. It is not a feeling, or it is not a mood. Emotion cannot sustain for a very long time. I think the duration that an emotion will stay at the peak of its being is, say, a few seconds to up to 20 minutes. Peak anger up to 20 minutes. That's the reason why people say, I will come back to you. People who have used emotional intelligence strategy, leveraged emotional intelligence strategy, when they face an adversity like this, they'll come back saying, sir, I think I will talk to you later. Rather than just having an altercation with your boss or feeling sad, you should give yourself some time and be mindful that you're getting angry, you're feeling frustrated, but that is okay. That's being just human. That is fine. So these are the 3 points I wanted to tell you, and connecting it to real time. Now to answer Nishant's question, yes, anything in excess is a poison. I truly believe in that. But self-compassion, I will not think in excess can ever happen, because self-compassion basically is how you're evaluating yourself, whether you're successful or not. So that is fine. But there are some dimensions like, let me take an example of self-indulgence, which I spoke in few slides before. Self-indulgence, when we extremely use self-indulgence, you start abusing, say, substance, or you engage in pleasurable activity which is detrimental for your mind and body, that becomes a poison. So self-compassion may not be actually very detrimental. So now I want to discuss with you these 7 strategies to improve self-compassion. So this is the key takeaway of our session on self-compassion. I call it self-compassion wheel. So the first spoke of the wheel is that you need to be in the right company. Be in the company of compassionate people. Why is it important? When people who are compassionate, they also will inject that kind of a feeling of compassion, and it's very contagious, right? So you also tend to be very compassionate, and you also will improve your self-compassion. And if you have observed, the children who are brought up in boundless love and extensive care are the people who automatically have self-compassion as a virtue in them. I can see some hands. Do I take these questions at the end of these 6 more strategy? Will that be fine with the audience? I assume. I can see some hands. 4 participants raised hands. Definitely at this end of another 6 more dimensions, I will answer. The next component is mindfulness training. So you need to train yourself on attention, focus, patience, being non-judgmental, and having a beginner's mind. So when you say beginner's mind, you start from a clean slate. You throw away the baggage in your mind. You do not cling on to those negative emotions, and you start afresh. That makes you much more lighter, much more successful in life. The third component is physical exercise. So I will urge all of you to participate in any form of physical exercise that suits your age and body structure. So you can pick from a basket of options like gymming, swimming, sports, walking. So I will definitely recommend walking for 45 minutes. And now the trick is, when you walk for 45 minutes, from 35th minute to 45th minute is the maximum calorie burn. It's not that I am saying, it is a researched fact. So if calorie burn is your agenda, is what your objective is, you should stick to your that 45 minute routine. So that's about giving physical exercise is one of the strategy for improving self-compassion. The fourth dimension is be with the nature. Surround yourself with plants. Apart from giving oxygen, it also adds to the ambience of your room or your house or your work setup. Fifth point is have a balanced and nutritious and timely food intake along with sufficient fluid intake. Now there is a saying which I wanted to quote here, is that you should chew your water and chew your water and drink your food. Meaning to say that for remaining healthy, meaning to say that you cannot take gulps of water, you should sip water, and you should chew food to such an extent that you make it into a fluid form before you swallow it. So this is very good for keeping your intestinal system very robust. And the next dimension is being, you be kindful to your body demands. Take rest whenever your body asks for rest. Get quality sleep of 8 hours, and every day you should get quality sleep of 8 hours. So whatever is that your body demands, I'm just saying 8 hours, whatever that your body demands, you should give. And also remember to take some power naps. So 10 minutes of power nap is good. But it becomes indulgence when you go for a 2 to 3 hours of afternoon siesta. So you need to be mindful about it. And the last component, which is equally important, or I would call this most important, is give yourself permission to be imperfect. So give yourself permission to be imperfect and accept yourself the way you are with all the flaws. It's okay. You don't have to compare apples to mangoes. You are a special creation of God. You're good the way you are. So that self-confidence will help you to go ahead in life and achieve all the success. So all these 7 dimensions, so 7 strategies, if you follow, I think you will be able to improve your self-compassion. So I can see those raised hands. Dr. Nishant would want to ask me those questions.
And we will take this question in the last.
Okay, fine.
Yes.
So I will leave you with this particular sharing by this famous spiritual leader, Dalai Lama. He says, caring for others requires caring for oneself, which is so very true. So if you have traveled by flight, most of us have traveled by flight, the flight crew talks about wearing the oxygen mask on yourself before helping others. I think it's so very true. You be compassionate, you be kind to yourself. Only then you will be able to be kind to others. So that's about self-compassion. Now, I will invite my co-facilitator, Dr. John, to talk about resilience. Now, I also want to connect self-compassion to resilience before I hand over the mic to Dr. John. I'm just telling you that by building self-compassion, you build the resilience muscle. According to me, resilience is something where you bounce back quickly after a setback. So self-compassion definitely is one of the tools for resilience, and I will invite Dr. John to enlighten us on resilience strategy, resilience building strategy. Thank you so much for patience hearing. And I'll take your questions.
Thank you, Uma ma'am, for that wonderful introduction to self-compassion and its relation to resilience. I have always seen a huge connection between individual emotion, loving yourself, showing kindness to others comes only after we show kindness to oneself, right? And so therefore there's a wonderful connect between self-compassion and resilience. My objective is to take this discussion forward and connect with you on the idea of resilience. So with your kind permission, I'd like to begin. And the first question obviously is, how do you define resilience? I love that cat hanging onto that rope, and stating very clearly, hang in there. And probably that's what resilience is for all of us. We are living in what we call disruptive times, right? There is a pandemic around us that is making life take in all kinds of challenges simultaneously. How are we dealing with these challenges? This is not easy. So we thought that we could probably make everyone aware of something, the idea of resilience. So when I use this word resilience, I'll give all our participants 30 seconds probably to think of a similar word. What does resilience mean to you? What do you understand by the term resilience? And you could put it in the chat box or in the question and answer box. I have asked this question multiple times, and I came across wonderful, terms. One of the terms that you see on the screen right now is flexibility. For me, flexibility is an important aspect of my life, right?
Sir, John sir, one of the participants has said that resilience is elasticity.
Resilience is elasticity. Wonderful term. Resilience is elasticity. Resilience is flexibility.
Resilience is the ability to bounce back in spite of failures. Dr. Shruti,
excellent. To bounce back. Resilience is, the very definition of resilience is bouncing back from adversity.
Self-control.
Right? Yes, self-control. So somebody said elasticity. I would go back to that term of flexibility, and it reminds me, this word resilience actually reminds me about the rubber band. The rubber band is very, very flexible, very, very elastic. It can stretch to a definite point and be able to spring back to its original shape, right? So resilience for me is all about flexibility. It is about strength. It is about mental toughness. It is about self-control. It is also about overcoming adversities, overcoming challenges, right? That brings me to two very clear-cut definitions of resilience, right? Let's look at this resilience. I'll just read it out for you. Resilience is characterized by the ability to bounce back. One of the participants did mention that, bouncing back from negative emotional experiences. When we talk about self-compassion, when we talk about emotional intelligence, it is this ability in all of us to be able to bounce back, to come back strong from these negative emotional experiences and be flexible enough to adapt very quickly to the changing demands of stressful experiences. What's happening right now, since February, March, we've been in the middle of chaos, basically. Chaos brought about by a common virus, right? Many of us are still trying to adjust to this new reality. I wouldn't call it creative disruption. I would call it chaotic disruption. That's what we face on a day-to-day basis, every day over the past 2.5 months or 3 months, so on. So one of the important aspects that I like about this particular definition is the fact that flexibility is an important aspect of building resilience amongst us. The second definition is also very, very clear. Resilience is the ability to bounce back from adversity, but the second part is what I want you to focus upon. Resilience is also the ability to grow from challenges. And that is what we introduced you to right in the beginning. When we talk about self-compassion, when we talk about emotional intelligence, what we are trying to convey is that personally, for myself, for my colleagues, and for everyone out there, it is important to think positively, to look at these challenges, the current challenges, including to look at it as opportunities that would enable us to grow, and grow what? Substantially grow resilient skills. Okay. Now, if I move on from that particular aspect of the definition of resilience, which is flexibility and thinking positively, as well as growing, enabling growth for ourselves as well as for others, I would like to now ask you to focus on what I call protective factors. What are these protections? I'm not talking about face masks. I'm not talking about sanitizers. I'm talking about internal protection factors. What are these protection factors? These are basically variables that contribute to a person's resilience. The first one that I have highlighted here, right on top, is our thoughts. What are we thinking when we face adversity, when we face, say, a negative event around us, when we face this COVID-19 times, where every day we get to hear horror stories, every day we get to hear about some contamination in some particular area. What are we thinking in that current moment of time? Are we aware of our thoughts? This is important. Okay, awareness, elements of awareness that helps us focus on what are we really thinking. Are we thinking dire thoughts? Are we thinking negative thoughts? Or are we thinking positive thoughts? Are we looking at the possibility of what could be done to handle these challenges, handle this negativity around us? Second is our emotions. As Uma ma'am also pointed out, our emotions are important. We cannot do away with our emotions. We might feel anger at times. We might feel frustration at times. We might feel helplessness at times. But being aware of our emotions is also an important aspect in our journey of building resilience skills. Third is, of course, our reactions. How do we react? How do we behave in a given situation? Do we start panicking like many others do? Yes, many of us do panic. We would have panicked when we saw how dangerous the situation has become outside. Even when we go out right now, when we travel outside, we're always conscious about who's there with us, who's around us, who's coughing, who's sneezing, and we consciously try to modify or mold our behavior based on whether we are thinking negatively or positively, whether we are feeling positive or feeling negative. And this is what conditions our behavior. The last one, of course, is our strengths. I will discuss and I will highlight what I call character strengths. We have certain character strengths. We need to become aware of what we are best at in terms of our strengths that we possess inside. All of these four elements of awareness would help us work out better resilience to moments of adversity, to times of adversity, to the chaotic disruptions that are currently happening around us. Finally, I would like to talk about goal setting. Our goals are important. This is our capacity. This is what decides our capacity to be able to change our thoughts from negative to positive, from negative emotions, negative feelings to positive feelings. This capacity is moderated by our mental agility, by the multiple perspectives. When we face an event, are we able to think from different angles, from different perspectives, to be able to assimilate the best of each of those perspectives and then go about solving problems. I have the experience of watching somebody looking at a problem from so many angles, meta angles, that they are able to suggest and come up with alternative solutions by the dozen. Okay, not just
John,
one
sir,
solution. Yeah. Please.
I have a question here.
Yes.
That in our society, we see people with different background, different culture, different belief, and different personality traits.
Right.
So is there any association between belief and resilience?
Definitely. See, our value systems, our beliefs, our habits, our attitudes, our tradition, our culture itself, the Indianness of our culture is what dominates and conditions our behavior. So our behavior is always moderated definitely by our beliefs. What do I believe in? Say current times, COVID-19 times, do we believe that there is a silver lining? There is a silver lining in the dark clouds. Do we believe that there is a light at the end of the tunnel? Probably we might look at that light as a teeny weeny bit of light, but far away in the future. But the fact that we are looking at that light tells us that we are thinking positive. So definitely our belief conditions behavior. And that is what I would like to help you focus upon. This whole idea of optimism. I believe optimism is critical to resilience. And there I would like to narrate two experiences sitting in the comforts of my home, watching the news. I am amazed at this young mother, exhausted mother, dragging a trolley baggage, somewhere on the highway, somewhere in India, okay, dragging this trolley baggage. And it was surprising to see her young child, a young child, hungry child, parked on top of that trolley baggage, and this young mother dragging this trolley baggage along this highway, probably to some level of safety and security. For me, that's resilience right there. And that's resilience primarily because I can feel in that action of that young mother a lot of optimism. So what is optimism? As I have stated there right on the slide, is optimism is the belief in a positive future. Is the belief in a positive future. We see dark clouds all around us. We see the impact of COVID-19 all around us, chaotic disruptions in terms of unemployment, in terms of financial stress, okay, in terms of even within the family, you have a lot of conflict, you have a lot of compromises happening. You have in building societies, people thinking and behaving differently, not trusting their own neighbor. Doctors being, harmed. okay, what we call our COVID heroes, you know, our medical heroes being harmed, you know, people being viewed as suspiciously. If you're traveling home to your own village, I've heard of a horror story where he's traveling to he's reached his home village and he's traveling to, you know, by auto, and people are all along the street, people are looking out and trying to find out, where is this guy coming from? Where is he traveling to? This reminds me about the second.
John, sir, we have only 2-3 minutes left, so
right.
We have to wrap it up.
So optimism is the belief in a positive future. Okay. So what does optimism do differently? Optimism, as I said, is energy. You know, it gives us energy to identify problems better, to look at problems as challenges, and to identify what is it that we can control. What is it that we can control? So I will help you look back on resilience as the first aspect of our resilience skill is to be optimistic and think positively about the future. And this is what I'm talking about. You know, many a times we come across these resilience pitfalls. We come across dangerous thoughts, rigid thoughts, patterns that undermine our ability. Adversity thinking, you know, overwhelming anxiety. We think of something negative and that spirals down to more and more negativity to the extent that we lose control of the particular situation. And this is where I would like to leave you with something called instant resilience. This is real-time resilience. We instantaneously respond to the negative event or to the negative thought that is churning inside us and challenge it on the spot. How do we do that? We look at it in 3 distinct ways. Evidence is one of the first things that we look at. What we do is, whenever we come across a negative thought or a negative event or a negative activity around us, we do a sentence starter. What we do is to emphasize and start our thought modify our thought by stating that is not true because, and we start building up positive evidence against that particular negative thought. The second aspect that I would like to talk about in terms of instant resilience strategy is reframing. You know, what happens is we see something negative around us, we start feeling negativity within us, we use another sentence starter. And that sentence starter is, a better way to see this, a more helpful way to see this would probably be and dash, dash, dash. You know, we try and control our negative emotion by trying to use positive sentence starters to try and control our negative emotions or negativity around us. The third aspect is contingency planning. What happens in this is we should always, you know, negativity can really take us nowhere. So when we have this negativity around us and when we start thinking negatively, we challenge it on the spot by always having a contingency plan, a plan that needs to be executed if something goes wrong. So my sentence starter there would be, in terms of thinking, would be, if A happens, I will do this. I will end the thing, I will block the thing so that I minimize the negative impact of that particular event. So 3 things that I would like you to reflect upon: evidence, reframing, and contingency planning by using these sentence starters. That is not true. A more helpful way to see this, or a better way to see this, would be this. And the third one is, if this happens, I will do that. If A happens, I will do that. And that brings me to the whole issue of positive emotions. How do I bring in these positive emotions? I bring that in by identifying certain character strengths. What are those character strengths? These are basically character traits. A simplistic definition to character traits and character strength is, it describes humans at their very best. There is something within us amongst these 24 character strengths, which are based on 6 virtues: wisdom, the virtue of wisdom, the virtue of courage, the virtue of humanity, the virtue of justice, the virtue of temperance, and the virtue of transcendence. All these 6 virtues combine to give us 24 different distinct character strengths. Character strength of creativity. I need to identify what is that character strength that I am best at. Is it creativity? Is it curiosity? Is it forgiveness? Is it self-compassion? Is it teamwork? Is it love, kindness? Is it my emotional intelligence? Is it my optimistic belief in myself? I believe in optimism primarily because I am a recovering pessimist. I've been a pessimist for a very long period of time, and I'm recovering from that primarily because I learned from my experiences to recognize the value of optimism. And therefore, that is my character strength. The belief that I can be optimistic and that optimistic would lead me into a better future is what builds resilient skills inside of me. And I'm sure the same would be the case for you. I leave you with this particular takeaway. Amongst a few questions, I want you to identify this particular URL. Go to this URL. It's a University of Pennsylvania URL where you can take this values and action survey. It's a survey of character strengths. There are 240 questions. You need to register, but it is free of cost. Please evaluate yourself, identify your character strengths. Optimism and character strengths would help you face adversities currently during these COVID times, as well as in the future, much, much better and keep you happy. Therefore, my last slide is more than education, more than experience, more than training. It's resilience that determines who succeeds and who fails. Resilience, therefore, as one of the participants stated, resilience is the ability to bounce back. I am possible. It's not impossible. I am possible. I leave you with those happy thoughts. I hope you were able to follow the sequence that I was trying to take you through. Understanding resilience as something flexible, an ability to bounce back, focusing on identifying optimism as our character strength, and then identifying character strengths that would help us build resilient skills. For me, resilience is optimism, a view of a positive future, and the ability to bounce back from adversity. Thank you for your patient listening. I hand over to Nishant for us to.
Thank you so much, sir. From this valuable discussion, very interestingly, mindfulness has come out as a crucial component and one of the strategies to improve self-compassion and resilience both. So if you go by the research, we have found that individuals with higher mindfulness have greater resilience, thereby increasing their life satisfaction. They note that resilience can be seen as an important source of subjective well-being and point out many ways mindfulness can promote this state of mind. So this is not the only reason mindfulness promotes well-being. Of course, there are more studies which suggest that mindfulness training also promotes self-compassion, which can lead to higher level of happiness, but increase resilience clearly. So we can say that along with self-compassion and resilience, mindfulness is a very crucial concept through which self-compassion and resilience can be promoted. Now we will move to the question and answer section. Ms. Divya Suresh is asking, resilience emerges through your life experience and through the belief you adopt about yourself and your place in the world. Is it right? Resilience emerges through your life experience and through the belief you adopt about yourself and your place in the world.
Is that question for me?
Yes, sir.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Resilience is internal, something that is internalized. Okay. It's there within us. We have ounces of resilience, and it is conditioned by our own belief. How do we look at the world? You know, do we look at it internally or do we look at it externally is an important aspect. See, if we look at it internally, we are focusing on locus of control. We are focusing on psychological profiles, which tells us, which is dependent on our moods, our emotions, you know, what we are feeling at that particular moment of time. But externally would mean that we look at it as something that is happening around us that can impact us, but it can also impact a lot of other people. And therefore, resilience, belief, our self-compassion, our view of ourselves, our positive view of ourselves can all go together and help us deal with adversity better.
One question is from Vedantan sir. I think you have already answered this question.
Yes.
He's saying, putting the same question in different way, does locus of control in a way influence self-compassion?
Okay, so that's a question for me. Yeah. Professor Vedantan, the answer, I think it's, as John sir mentioned, I will just extend John sir's point of view. A person who is having internal locus of control tend to be, there is a high correlation between internal locus of control and self-compassion. It's a researched information I'm talking about. So person who feels that he or she can change the world, change the destiny, are the ones who are highly internal locus of control people. And they are the people also tend to be, there is a correlation. It's not the same, but there is a definite correlation between self-compassion and internal locus of control. Yeah.
Ma'am, one question from Namita Prabhu.
Sure.
In the current scenario, millennials are self-critical and most of time are self-abusive. Okay. There are many scenarios where they get all critical and self-doubts in. Few cases ends with taking several, like self-harm, suicide, shutting down. How can they develop self-compassion?
Okay, so I think that is a very practical question. I really like to, who's it, Namita? So Miss Namita Prabhu. Namita Prabhu. So my answer to that question would be that, see, first let us look, see now you've learned all the three dimensions of self-compassion. First of all, you need to stop criticizing yourself. That's the first dimension. I understand when people around you keep telling that you are no good. Say, I am just giving you I'm taking that as an assumption. Somebody says that you are not good, or maybe childhood, someone has told you that you are not good, you get into self-doubt, thereby your ability to reduce it, have self-compassion is much reduced. You need to, build that tissue in you to have self-compassion by telling yourself, look, I probably may not be the best of the student in the class. So what? I've got an ability to sing well, or whatever are your other abilities. Multiple intelligence, right? There are so many 8 types of intelligence. You must be good at any one of those. So you need to first tell yourself that, yes, someone has criticized and I need to be mindful about it. You should. There was a question by Dr. Sangeeta also. If it is only self-kindness, will it lead to something like complacency? That's what she asked. So I have an answer for that. I will combine both the questions together and answer. If it is only self-kindness, probably it will lead to complacency. And there is another person who asked about a person who's a perfectionist. I'm not getting the name. I think it's an unknown viewer, unknown participant, asks whether a person who's a perfectionist, if you say that self-compassion you have to follow, will the person get restless? That's also a very valid question. You will, provided you have only one dimension. You're only looking at one dimension, which is self-kindness. You also have to come down to other two, which is that you have to look at it from a common humanity perspective. There are other people who are also facing the same problem. To Namita Prabhu, you should also know that there are many more teenagers who are facing similar problems. So that is just an understanding. That's not going to reduce your pain, but at least it will give you a little bit of comfort. You will not be so perplexed, right? Also, I want you to use a third dimension, which is mindfulness, where you understand, okay, you are feeling suicidal, you are feeling not having any self-worth, your self-esteem has touched rock bottom. I want you to pay attention there. What is the direction when you touch the rock bottom? Namita, the direction is upwards. So the moment you touch rock bottom, you will build resilience. And there was another question on different cultures or experiences will make resilience different. Yes, that's true. Different cultures can bring your resilience arm differently. That's correct. But let us look at all the three dimensions together. Do not connect self-compassion only, or do not tie self-compassion only to one particular dimension. It is a combination of all the three. So if you work all the three dimensions together, you definitely will train yourself in self-compassion.
Thank you so much,
And
ma'am.
there was another question by I just made a note of that. Richa Tiwari was asking about that, which is also a very valid question. Indulgence and self-compassion. Difference with a real-time example. I think I tried giving that. Maybe I'll give another one. So now, say you are a person who need to watch weight, and you're feeling very low. You don't, and you've been doing rigorous self-exercise. I mean, exercise and control over your diet. You're doing your carrying yourself very well, but a particular day you're feeling very low and you don't feel like getting up and going to the gym or walk or whatever that you have chosen. So self-indulgence in that case will be telling yourself, taking the escape route, telling yourself that it's okay. One day if you don't go, nothing will happen, or a week you don't go, nothing will happen. So that, see, one day is fine, but if you make that as a practice every time when you're not feeling good, you stop working out, is self-indulgence. Whereas opposite to that, when you have self-compassion, what will you do? You will apply those three dimensions. As I told you, you are being kind to yourself there, saying that, okay, I'm not feeling good, but you also put the second dimension there. It's a common problem of humanity. So whatever was a rebuke from your boss or your friend or your family member, whomever, is something which is a suffering of many more people. So we cannot be so very down and out with that kind of a spiraling down effect of negativity. We should not do that.
So true,
And
so true, so
yeah.
true.
Ma'am,
And the
actually,
last
we are
dimension
having.
would be, can I complete Nishant's
Yeah,
document?
yes, ma'am, yes.
So the last dimension will be being mindfulness there. You need to be mindful and slowly nudge yourself to go for walk, saying that, look, you are gaining weight. You want to be fit, and you've invested all your time, all these days, all these months or years on not eating the most yummy food or getting up in the morning going for gymming. Now you give up because of something which has happened in your life. You're just wasting these. You need to be mindful. So I think that is how I hope, Richa Tiwari, I answered your question. Yes,
I'd just like
Nishant,
to
sorry.
add to what Uma ma'am just said. What we are trying to tell you is, keep it simple. You know, be kind to yourself so that you can be kind to others. Build the resilience and the ability and the courage to come back by being optimistic about the future. There are questions that I have seen who they talk about demotivating people around them. So will resilience help? Yes, resilience will help as long as you are optimistic about the future. You have positive emotions guiding your behavior, guiding your thoughts. As ma'am said, and as I also mentioned during my presentation, we are constantly tempted to spiral down into a point or into a position where we go out of control. And what goes out of control are our thoughts, because we begin with a negative thought, and if we continue to build on that negativity on and on and on, we will go out of control in terms of how we react to what we are feeling at that point of time. Instead, do instant resilience. Bring in that positive emotion, reframe, reframe and state that, look, this is what I believe could be the reality. This may not be true, okay? And times will pass. When you build positive emotions within us, and focus on our character strengths, I'm sure that we will build the courage to come back, to bounce back, and sustain that resilience for uncertain times in the future. Kambam sir did mention about uncertainty. Well, yes, we are living in uncertain times, adverse times, uncertain times. It is only resilience, our personal resilience, that would help us hold on to sanity, hold on to that bright future that we look forward to.
John sir, actually, we are having so many questions, but we will take only
Yes.
one question from Dr. Sudarshan Shechanna, sir.
Yes.
He's asking, can you help walk us through an entrepreneur's definitive guide to mindfulness and resilience?
Can you repeat that?
Can you help walk us through an entrepreneur definitive guide to mindfulness and resilience?
Oh yes, oh yes. See, entrepreneurs are essentially explorers. I always think of entrepreneurs as explorers. They explore the unknown. They are the risk takers. By taking the risk of stepping into the unknown, they are trying to make a better future for themselves. And therefore, resilience is critical to them. Okay, being optimistic. If you interview an entrepreneur who would have come through multiple failures in life, I'm sure that he would still be optimistic about that beautiful future that he is working hard for, right? So entrepreneurs, the one thing that we can give them in abundance, particularly small entrepreneurs, particularly those small, innovative businesses that we see around us, is to help them recognize their character strengths. They already have risk-taking ability. They are very innovative. They are very creative. They're competitively aggressive. They are not bothered about immediate returns. They are bothered about the uniqueness of their idea. All that we can help them with is to sustain their resilience, to look out patiently for that bright future that probably is not visible to them right now. And that's the importance of resilience out there. Thank you, Sheshana sir, for that particular question.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, John sir and Uma ma'am. Now, we will hand this session over to Dr. Deepanjana ma'am.
As we come to the end of the session, I would like to thank profusely Dr. Uma Warrier for her interesting manner of explaining adversity, the various facets of self, and of course, the components of self-compassion. We have learned a lot today, ma'am.
Thank you.
I would like to thank Dr. Mono John for giving us an apt perspective on resilience and the dimensions associated with it, especially related to these pandemic times, with real life examples too. Thank you so much, sir. I would like to thank Dr. Nishant Singh for a deft moderation of the session and asking pertinent questions at the right time. Thanks, sir, for holding up the session. I would also like to thank the management, staff, and all participants of CMS Business School and outside who have attended the session. With that, we conclude the session. Thank you all again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, doctor, and thank you for the patient listening and wonderful questions. I'm a little sad that I'm not able to answer all your questions. Probably there is going to be a feedback link which is going to be sent to you. You can reach us out, and we will definitely be more than happy to answer your questions.
We'll be very happy to receive your comments and your questions, and we will try and answer that to the best of our ability. You can get access to our email IDs also, and our institutional email ID. And I'm sure that we'll be able to answer those questions to your satisfaction. Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. And thank you for the patient list.